Okay, so welcome to this Module 3G presentation that discusses patients' rights. By way of introduction, patients have the right to receive care that is respectful, that is compassionate, that is competent, and that protects their dignity and privacy. Your patients also have a right to live and be cared for in a safe environment. In addition to keeping a patient's environment clean and hazard-free, providing for a safe environment means that your patients are not abused or neglected. Abuse essentially means causing harm to another person, and there are many forms of abuse. Under the spectrum of abuse and neglect, we'll first consider physical abuse, which is any harm, whether intentional or unintentional, in which a patient's body is harmed. This could include slapping, punching, kicking, biting, cutting, bruising, burning, spitting at the patient, pushing, shoving, restraining a person, or handling a person in a rough manner. Physical abuse includes forcing a patient to do something they do not want to eat. So that could mean your patient does not want to eat, or you force feed the patient the food, or a patient that does not want to have his or her bath, and you force bathe such an individual. So now, what is emotional abuse? Emotional abuse is abuse that occurs through emotionally causing harm to a person. This could include name calling. This could include yelling at the patient. This could include humiliating the patient, threatening the patient, intimidating the patient, insulting the patient, making fun of a person, treating a person like a child or as if they are unable to think or make their own decision. Threatening a patient in order to make them do something or to not tell on you for something you did, or threatening the patient is also considered emotional abuse. Threatening to take away a patient's belongings, time spent engaging in pleasurable activities, or to isolate a patient, such as put them in locked room alone, are all considered emotional abuse. Now, this may sound far-fetched, but this happens to patients who are dependent, patients who don't have as much autonomy in their own life, happen to fall victims of emotional abuse in the hands of a negatively intended caregiver. So you have to be aware of such and be sure that you are not such a negatively intended or intentional caregiver who ends up emotionally abusing his or her clients. Financial abuse is abuse that occurs with regards to your patient's finances. This could include stealing money or property, improperly using a patient's money for things other than the intended purpose, taking advantage of a patient's finance, and threatening to cause physical and emotional harm if a patient does not give a person their money. Sexual abuse is abuse that occurs when a person is touched in a way in which they do not wish to be touched. This could include fondling, unwanted touching, and any unwanted sexual activity. So sexual abuse also includes exposing oneself to a person or showing someone pornographic material that they do not wish to see, or taking pornographic picture of a person without their consent. Domestic violence is abuse that occurs by the individual spouses, an intimate partner, or a family member. And it could include any type of abuse that has been discussed earlier. It could include physical, emotional, financial, sexual abuse. Those are the entities called domestic violence if it occurs within the context of the patient's family or intimate partner relationship. Now, what is neglect? Neglect is when a person is harmed by a caregiver. This could be a family member or a health care worker. And this could include when a caregiver fails to provide necessary care. This could include failing to clean a patient up who is soiled, failing to bathe a patient, failing to provide food or fluid to a patient, failing to turn and position a bedridden patient such that they develop bed sores. Neglect can just be as harmful as abuse. Remember, a patient depends on you, the caregiver, to provide them with the care they need to live. Otherwise, your role will not be needed in such a patient's life. Now, how do you report abuse and neglect? First is you as the caregiver, you must never neglect or abuse your patient in any way. And you must work to protect your patient from abuse or neglect by others. Could be family members, could be intimate partners. Now, should you observe such, report any suspected abuse or neglect immediately to your supervisor. So what are some signs to look out for you to suspect that your patient may be abused or may be a victim of neglect? If they have new or unexplained bruises, if they have marks that look like they were made from belt straps, buckles, objects, or teeth, if they have burns that are unexplained or that are in unusual shapes or places, if they have bruises, bleeding, discharge, pain, or swelling in the genital area, you would observe that when you're cleaning up your patient. If they have fractures, dislocated bone, if they are limping anew, or inability to put weight on a leg or use an arm, if they have pressure ulcers and skin tears, if they have unexplained mood changes, especially during and after visits of certain members of the family, should heighten your index of suspicion. If their clothing do not fit, or is torn or is dirty, or the clothing they have on is inappropriate for the weather, you may want to suspect neglect. If they live in unsafe and unclean living conditions, you may want to suspect neglect. If your patient is losing weight, has poor appetite, or if the patient appears to be hungry and not well fed, if the beddings and incontinence briefs are always soiled and appear to have not been changed for a while, that could be a sign of neglect. If your patient has rashes, pain, redness in the perineal area, that's like diaper rash, from lack of cleaning the patient after they have voided, that's a sign of neglect. If there is violence in the home that you, the caregiver, witnesses, including physical or emotional abuse, please report such to your supervisor. Then, if comments are made by the patient that indicate abuse or neglect, including reports of family members stealing or using their money inappropriately as the caregiver, please report such to your supervisor. So, what are some signs of abuse or neglect? Remember, as the caregiver, you are legally responsible for reporting any suspected abuse or neglect. So, failure to report suspected abuse or neglect, or actually engaging in any types of abuse or neglect, that can result in legal and criminal actions against you. So, if you suspect or you observe signs of abuse or neglect, you want to document the observation and you contact your supervisor to report such findings. Then, as we said in the previous lecture, that you want to also use your senses. What did you hear? What did you see? What did you smell? What did you touch? That may indicate abuse is occurring. Then, do not be judgmental in your report. Do not try to interpret what you think is going on. If abuse is suspected or observed, a report is made by making a phone call to a local child protective service if you are in a country where such are available, or adult protective service if you are in a country where such is available. And when you're making your report, you'll be asked specific information about your observations, remain calm, and report only facts, not assumptions. You may also be asked to provide a written report, and your agency usually will provide them with specific training and guidelines for reporting such abuse. Now, what are your patient's rights? The American Hospital Association developed a patent bill of rights which should be provided by agency to every person in their care. Patients also have a right to have the patient's bill of rights explained to them and a copy provided to them in a language they understand. So your patient has the right to considerate and careful care. Your patient has the right to obtain understandable information about their diagnosis, their treatment, and their prognosis. For instance, a patient that has breast cancer, he or she has the right to know the diagnosis. He or she has the right to know these are the ways we intend to treat you. He or she has the right to know what to expect prognosis-wise. And they have a right to be informed about the risk and the benefit of all the services and the treatments that will be offered by the healthcare team. Your patient also have a right to know the identity, in this case, your name, your license, and your role as a member of the healthcare team, and even of all other persons that are involved in their care. They have a right to ask for your identity. The patient has a right to make decision about the plan of their care before receiving treatment. They have a right to say yes or no, to ask you that they want to think it through, they want to seek second opinion, they want to discuss with members of the family, and you will take that in good faith. Your patient also has the right to refuse any treatment and to be informed about the medical consequences of refusing treatment. So if a patient says no, you take it in good faith and you just inform them the medical consequences of refusing treatment. If your patient refuses a specific treatment or care, they still have the right to receive other care services. So if a patient says, no, I do not want to enter the bathroom to have my bath, what are the other ways this patient can be bathed? Can they have a bed bath? So they have a right to receive other care services. And if your organization cannot provide such, then you provide a referral to other agency or organization. The patient has the right to participate in the planning of their health care and to be informed in any changes in the plan of care. Prior to the change being made, you have to carry your patient along from bed bathing to dental care to feeding to change of wound dressing. Carry them along before making such a decision. Your patient have the right to an advance directive or to designate a healthcare proxy to make decisions for them if they are unable to do so themselves. And your patient has a right to privacy. Your patient also have a right to expect that all communications and records pertaining to their health and healthcare will be kept confidential by you, the healthcare provider, except in cases of suspected abuse where you have to make a legal report or public health hazards when reporting is permitted or mandated by the law. Your patient also has a right to review their healthcare record, so they can request for their healthcare record that they want to review it, and even to have information explained to them, except in situations where such is restricted by the law. The patient has a right to expect that within its capability, an agency will make reasonable responses to a patient's request for medically indicated care and services. Now, if the organization is unable to accommodate such requests, the patient has a right to request a transfer to another organization that can provide such requests. Okay. Now, your patient also has the right to ask and be informed of any business or financial relationship that exists within the organization which may influence their care. The patient has the right to consent or decline participation in research studies and to be provided with a full explanation about participation in such studies. So you can't recruit your patient for research without giving them adequate explanation and obtain an informed written consent to such aim. The patient has the right to receive continuity of care and to be informed when such care cannot be provided. So if you choose to terminate, and even if it's just a therapeutic relationship, you have a right to inform the patient, not just that you abscond or disappear on them. Then your patient has the right to be informed of policies and procedures that relate to their care. The patient has the right to be informed of the method they should use to resolve any discrepancies, conflict or grievances they may have. So if they're not pleased with your management, they have a right to know how to resolve such or lay their grievances. They have the right to know the procedure of making complaints if they feel they have not been given the care they deserve. Then your patient also have the right to make complaints without fear of discrimination or negative repercussions for doing so. They should not be scared that if they complain or tell on you for not doing a good job, that you will then come and make them a victim or victimize them. Your patient also have the right to be informed of any changes for services and available payment methods and insurances that are being accepted. Now, what are your patient's responsibility? This is adapted from the American Hospital Association of 1992. As the most important partner in the healthcare team, your patient also have certain responsibility. It is the patient's responsibility to provide information about their health, hospitalization, medications, changes in symptoms or health condition. So you, the healthcare giver, you are doing a probing, your patient is giving the response or the answers. Your patient should also ask questions and ask for additional information about their health and treatment. So you want to explain all you can medically. It is your patient's responsibility to ask further questions. The patient is responsible to inform the healthcare provider about the advance directive. That is, should they come to that point where they can make decisions for themselves. Advance directives usually are written ahead of time. It is their own responsibility to inform the healthcare giver. And even if they have an healthcare proxy, the person who begins to make decisions for them when they cannot, they should inform the healthcare provider and provide them with a written copy. It is your patient's responsibility to inform the healthcare provider about any changes they make to their advance directive or healthcare policy. Your patient is responsible to inform their healthcare providers if they expect problems with the treatment or that they receive, or if they experience problem. This includes informing the provider if home visits needs to be changed. Maybe it's not comfortable, the timing is just not suiting them, or they're not pleased with the services being offered by the caregiver. It is the responsibility of the patient to bring that to the healthcare team. Okay, so your patient is responsible for being aware of the organization's policy and procedure and to make reasonable accommodations to meet the needs of the organization. The patient is responsible providing necessary insurance and financial information to the organization in order that payments be made for services rendered and to make payments arrangements as necessary. The patient is responsible for informing the healthcare provider of any dissatisfaction with their services. So the feedback is the onus of the patient to carry it to the healthcare provider. The patient is responsible for carrying out mutually agreed upon responsibilities. If you say you're going to take your medication by 8 o'clock and we have agreed, the onus is on the patient to remember to take such medication. Then your patient is responsible for providing a safe environment for the health care to be provided. So how can you, as the caregiver, support your patient's rights? One is to never abuse your patient in any way. Complete all your tasks and provide excellent care for your patient. Never neglect your patient. That way you're supporting your patient's rights. And when you suspect any abuse or neglect, you want to report such immediately to your supervisor. You want to keep all your patient's information confidential. You never discuss your patient information in a public place. It's not something to be discussed about coffee in a cafe or in an eatery. You will not gossip about a patient to your friends or family. You leave work at work and family business at in the family. You never discuss your patient information with people outside of the healthcare team. That will be you preaching confidentiality. You never leave your patient's record unattended. If you're using a computer, you use a password protected computer. You close the browser and log out of the patient record before walking away from the computer, so that information is not made available to every Tom, Jack, Dick, and Harry. You do not leave messages that will identify your patient's information, voice, mail, or with people who are taking messages. You don't put your patient's identifying information in emails. You do not keep patient information on a personal computer or other personal electronic devices. That will be breach of confidentiality. Now, for documents that are no longer in use, you shred them as your agency directs. You don't throw them in regular garbage. Now, it's also important you don't take picture of your patients. There's a breach of confidentiality. Do not take pictures of your patient with a personal camera. Do not take photos of your patient's home or belongings. Do not share information about your patient or their family on social networking sites. Never discuss your patient's address, their names, or information with others such that they can identify who the patient is. Don't tell or bring a family member or a friend to a patient's home during or in between work hours. It's just not professional, it's not ethical. Then always knock on your patient's door before you enter the house or a room they are in. It's courtesy, and you're allowing your patient to enjoy their own rights. You don't never open or read your patient's mail. It's not your business. You call your patient by their preferred name, and if they prefer to be called Mrs. So and so, or just Franklin James or Franklin John, you call them like that. Do not use baby talk with adults. So say hello, sweetie. No. That is not professional. You call your patient by their preferred name. You involve your patient in the planning of their care. You let them make choices and complete any task independently that they can. So at least you allow them gain some more independence, which is the goal of caregiving. You don't automatically touch your patient or complete a task without seeking permission first, even as little as you want to do vitals. Explain what you want to do and ask for permission. So can I go ahead, sir? May I go ahead, ma? If you have to do a change of dressing, may I go ahead to change this wound now? So please seek permission before you perform activities. That way you would be supporting your patients to enjoy the patient's rights that is due them. Now, if a patient refuses a service or treatment, you respect their right to do so. You document and you report the refusal. Don't impose any treatment on any patient. Do not accept gifts or money from a patient or their family. If you shop for groceries or other items for a patient, use the money as directed. Don't shop more than what you were directed to. Now, document all care that is provided timely, truthfully. Be accurate with the amount of time that you provide care. Do not overestimate. Do not underestimate. Just be truthful. Then do not document care that was not provided. That will be lying. That will be unethical. Okay, and with that, we come to the end of this presentation again. And as always, thank you very much for staying with me. Bye-bye.